begin recording. That way I can share that recording with y'all later in case you need it for a resource.
So Nora, we've got everything from some beginners who've not used this product to people who are pretty advanced to know how to do coding. So you've got a broad spectrum and those in between. So
awesome. So pretty good mix.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah, well, just kind of give me a signal. Let me know whenever everyone seems like they might be kind of logged on, and we can kind of get started.
And we are recording this, guys, so we'll be able to share the recording later. Why don't we go ahead and get started?
Awesome. And so if anyone has any questions, we've got a few people on today. So if you want to unmute and just interrupt me and ask, please feel free. Otherwise, if you kind of want to stay muted and just use the chat function, I've also got the chat box up, so I'll be keeping my eye on that for any questions as well. So whichever works better for everyone else. And so as you can see here, I'm kind of logged into your account already. So Matt said it would be cool to go ahead and use the Show Homes Charleston account to demo in. So I'll clean up any kind of mess I make in here, but we'll be kind of walking through the whole platform. So for those of you that are newer to it, making sure you feel really comfortable navigating, and those of you who are in this every day, maybe calling out some features that we've updated, and just sort of making sure that you're feeling, of course, really comfortable in here as well. So just to introduce myself, my name's Nora, and I'm an email specialist here at Emma. So we'll be doing 2 trainings like Matt mentioned. So 1 hour each. Today we're going to be covering mostly audience management. So talking about the different ways to manage and target with your audience. And then we'll also get into working in the campaign drag and drop editor a bit. And then next week when we meet at the same time, we'll be going over response. So taking a look at your performance metrics after a campaign has deployed, understanding how to read those and sort of do some retargeting there, as well as kind of walking through some different automation options. So that may be something new for some people as well. But just to get started, of course, this will be your homepage when you come into Emma. So we've got our marketing calendar right here. And so if we check out our marketing calendar, we've got a little blue dot that's going to be under, screen went away for a second. Cool. So little blue dot under any recently sent campaigns here. So we can, of course, quickly jump into anything that's recently gone out, check out the response here, or anything coming up, you'll also see that blue dot. So it's a good way to kind of keep an eye on what's scheduled, the cadence of your sending, and what's going out from your account. And then, of course, here on your homepage, you've got some quick performance metrics. So averages over the last 30 days for your open rate, your click to open rate, and sort of your account activity, so that different sending volume and active contacts. And then you're also going to see a quick snapshot of any of your recent mailings here. So you'll see kind of that response. You can jump into the response page here, or just kind of quickly at a glance after you've sent, be able to check this out on your homepage, what's gone out recently, and how are you sort of performing. So pretty basic, but you are going to be able to get a lot of information out of this homepage. The other thing I kind of want to go through are just going to be your different sub-account settings. So when you're in the sub-account, you've got a couple different options. So if you need to manage your users at any point, maybe you need to add a user, you can come in here under your settings, choose users, and this is where you're going to be able to invite someone to your sub-account. So you'll be able to add them by email address. So if you have someone join the team, you need to get them up and running on Emma, you can add them right here to the sub-account. You can choose their role. So an administrator, you're going to get a little walkthrough here. Administrator is really going to be someone who's going to be managing your team, editing different permission levels. They can manage billing, purge archived items and API keys. This is really going to be sort of managing your team on Emma. You've also got this full option. So full is going to be someone who's really going to be managing your campaigns. So creating and sending mailings, choosing the targeting for those mailings, but they're not going to be able to do that administrative stuff like add team members, export audience data, any of that kind of stuff. But you can toggle on some additional permissions here for this role. You've also got an editor. So if you add someone to the team who maybe you want to have a little more control, maybe you all kind of want to be checking before something goes out, this is going to be someone who can create and edit mailings, but they're not going to be able to actually send. So they can create the mailing, choose the targeting from your audience, but then when it actually comes time to send, that will go through to a sort of manager level person to be able to review the campaign, make sure everything looks good, everything's brand consistent, and then that manager will actually schedule that to go out for you. Very similar with author, but author is going to be someone who's just creating a mailing. So maybe you're one of those great designers who's just doing some coding, you're not really going to be doing the targeting. You can come in as an author role, create that mailing, and then send it to someone to actually schedule that out for you and get the permission to send with all of the targeting. And then our last kind of role here is going to be response only. So maybe you bring on an intern to the team, maybe you have a manager who just needs to be checking out the response page, doesn't really need to be sending from the account. This is a great one for that option because you're just going to get access to the sort of campaign performance data that's available here. So those are going to be your different user permissions. And of course, it gives you a little run through here of each, but that's how you can kind of add people. And then once you've sent that invitation, of course, you'll see the username, the name, the role of the person last login. And then if you have any pending invitations, you're going to be able to find those right here. So easy way to kind of add people, get them up and running. We've also got some different account settings under your sub account, which are probably going to be already set up for you. But if you are, maybe anything changes for you and you need to know where this is, under your account settings here, you're going to see you've got your basics. So you're probably going to want to update your email address here. And this is just an email address where we can get a hold of you if we're updating anything, need to sort of let you know about upcoming rollouts on Emma, just so we can kind of get a hold of you if we need to. Additional info, this is just going to be some information you can enter here about your different business locations, so you may want to have this filled out. But the main thing you're really going to need to make sure is correct here is going to be the sender info. So you just want to make sure that the sender email is correct. This is just due to CAN spam compliance. We need to be able to have an address where mail can be sent. So your location and then just the email, which will default for your sender email. But you can, of course, update that when you're sending a campaign every time. Features aren't really going to matter that much to you right now, but notifications, you maybe want to receive an email after you've sent a campaign to get those response data. So you can turn that on right here and get an email summarizing the sort of response performance data after you send, or for our sub processors, so those people we sort of partner with on the back end. If you want to kind of be notified of any upcoming work on the platform, you can sign up there as well. And then finally, sort of the most important thing here in this account is going to be the DKIM. So DKIM sounds a little intimidating. It's basically just an advanced authentication tool. So this basically makes sure that when you send to an email client like Gmail or Yahoo, that when that email goes across, they realize that we have permission to send on your behalf. So us, Emma, as a platform, we are verified by you to send. You just want to make sure that this is set up because this prevents email from going to spam. So based on different security settings, it may sort of search for this DKIM. So in order to get this set up, you will need access to your domain. So Matt, you may be able to kind of send out some info after about the domain access to get this set up. But from here, you're just going to need to place this validation hash. So type in the domain that you're sending from. This is just sort of ghost text right here. So you're going to actually want to type in showhomes.com if that's the domain you send from. Grab this hash, and then you can actually follow this documentation right here, which I'll supply as well as the recording. So you can sort of follow these steps if you need to. This is our support hub, great for different walkthroughs of articles if you need to get in touch with our support team. But this is going to walk you through the actual DKIM setup. So it looks like we have a question in the chat from Leanne about the features tab. So this is actually showing because I'm in here as a manager level at the HQ. So since you're set up as an HQ account, there is this sort of additional tab that I'm able to see just because I have that access. So if you need any of those features changed, you can contact probably Matt or any other user who's going to be set up here at the sort of HQ level to control those features. But great question, Leanne. That's just going to be one that's sort of extra depending on your user role here on the platform. So this is going to be DKIM. So again, I'll send you that documentation. Pretty simple stuff. Your IT team can probably handle that, but this will be different for each sub account. So if each sub account kind of has its own owner, you all may kind of want to just make sure that you are grabbing this hash, adding all of them, because it will be different for each sub account that's already been created. So we'll just call that out and I'll definitely send that documentation over to y'all. Other things here, integrations, again, probably not going to be the most important to you right now because you already have most of your integrations set up. But if you do ever need to add any integrations here, like Facebook, Guestbook, so that's going to be using iPad for sign up, anything like that, you're going to be able to find all of those third-party apps that we partner with and connect them easily right from there. Archived items. So this is really going to be your trash can. This is actually kind of one that I like to always make sure that I call out. So your archived items, if you accidentally delete something, could be a group, could be segment, could be a full mailing. If you've something gone missing, you think you've accidentally deleted it, you can jump into archived items right here, grab it. You can fully delete it if you need to, or you can go ahead and restore it. So if something goes missing and you've accidentally deleted something, it's never lost. We hold on to things for, I think, over a year. So that's a handy one to know, just to kind of save yourself sometimes. It's definitely saved me before. And then exports, if you export any data, you're going to be able to find that here. If it takes a while to process, maybe a large list of contacts, that might take some time. You'll be able to jump over here once it's done processing and pull that data for yourself. So that's going to be kind of just the basics of your different sub-account settings, just so you all kind of have an eye on when you're navigating and you're aware of kind of where that information is being driven from. But the main thing we want to focus on today is going to start with audience. So with audience, when we land in here, we're going to see we've got kind of two different parts of our audience. We've got the audience management, and then we've got the audience growth. And so when we come in here, we've got 3 tabs. So active contacts, anyone that's eligible to send to. So of course, anyone on your mailing list who's able to receive campaigns. Your error contacts. So this could be a formatting error, a bounce. This could be something like maybe they forgot the @ in the email, something like that. They may land in error status. Or opt out. So anyone who has opted out from receiving your campaigns, and then they will further be suppressed from future campaigns since they have opted out, but they will be stored here to kind of keep that suppression available. So if we actually kind of click into a contact level, we can add them on a 1-by-1 basis. So if we need to just add someone one-off, we can always come in here. And now we're going to kind of see we can just add the email address. So whatever that email address is. And then we're going to see all of these different contact fields that we have available to store on specific contacts. So in this sub account right here in Charleston, we've got email. That's going to be all we need to send an email, of course. And then you've also got 2 additional kind of default fields. So first name, last name. We'll talk in just a second about how we can sort of set up some additional fields to store more information. But then we can also see all of the different groups that this member will be a part of. So we can automatically add someone on a one-off basis here and add them to a group if we need to. But kind of segueing from here, can jump into contact field. So we're going to now know that's where we're storing the information on a contact. And this is where we can add to those fields if we need a way to store information beyond just name and email. Check. Reggie, so if you don't see the sub account settings, that may be just based on your permission level. So you can kind of always double check to permission level. I can definitely kind of take a look after and make sure that everything looks good, but that is probably going to be based on user role there. So contact field. So default is going to be first name, last name. You're automatically going to have a contact field for email address. But if you need to create a new contact field, so you want to store additional information on your contacts, maybe to send more relevant messaging, maybe for some additional personalization, there's a lot of things that these contact fields can actually drive. So we'll see that in just a second. But if we need to come in and actually create a new contact field, pretty simple stuff. We're just going to navigate to that button, give the field a name, and choose the field type. So just to run really quickly through these, short answer, going to be your best catch-all. This can store text, numbers, decimals, symbols, all of that good stuff. So this is one that's pretty good if you just aren't sure what level, what the field should be. Long answer, of course, is going to be kind of this paragraph box. Numeric answer is going to be best for things if we're thinking based on lesser than or greater than sorting. So this field can only store numbers, so no symbols, no decimals even, just the numeric symbols. But this is going to be one where maybe we want to think about price range. So segmenting based on price range, segmenting based on dollar spent, purchases made, appointments made, something like that, where it's going to be sort of, we want to be able to really drill down in segments based on lesser than, greater than. So that's what numeric is really good for. Radio button is just going to allow someone to pick an option, select multiple. Of course, you got another option box. You can type each option out on the line and someone can select multiple. Same thing with checkbox. You're going to be able to select multiple from here as well, just a bit of a different format. Drop down, that's going to be select one. So just some different ways of displaying those options. Date picker, so maybe if you want to store birthday, sold date, anything like that, you can use the date picker field for something like that. And then of course, postal code, state, country, pretty self-explanatory. So those are going to be your different contact fields. And like I said, these can drive segments, these can drive forms, these can drive personalization in your campaigns. There's a lot that these contact fields can actually do. So to kind of show you that, I'm going to kind of skip over the groups and segments for just a second and jump into imports. I'm going to import an example file so we can see how that process works. But then also that way we have some contact fields to kind of play around with in the segment builder. So imports is going to be more under the growth because of course this has to do with our audience management. So when we jump in here, we've already got some completed, but if you need to add some new contacts, which I'm just going to add some test contacts that I can remove later, But we're going to go ahead and just choose import. And I've actually got an example set up here. So let me just grab my folder. Bear with me just a moment. And you can just drag over your Excel file with your contacts. So I've got a sample one set up that we can use. And here's where you can choose the source. So if you know where these contacts come from, you want to sort of clarify that to yourself, you can do that right there. And then this is how you can handle duplicate contacts that already exist in your audience from this import. So you can either just add an update. So it's going to take this information. If I already exist in your contacts, you're adding my email again. It'll update any information that I already have on myself and update it with the new information that you're bringing in from this import, or leave them alone. We're just going to add the contacts that aren't duplicates, and we're not going to update duplicate contacts. And then for workflow, when we talk about automations, we'll kind of see where this would apply, but maybe you have a welcome workflow. If you want to trigger it from this import, you can. Not very likely, we don't see that as much, but it is definitely an option if you want to. So from here, we can just hit continue. And now it's just going to go ahead and give us those different details that we have on our file. So this one, of course, it has some different fields that haven't already been set up in your account. So if we want to add those fields on the fly, we can do that right here. So birthday, maybe we want to go ahead, of course, choose date. Birthday, we can give that field a name, create it right there to map it out to. Let's see, service interest. So this is one I just kind of grabbed from your website based on your services. So maybe if people have indicated their interest in a service, or you maybe send a campaign asking people to clarify their interest, that could be something that you would use this field for. So for maybe this one, I've got a couple different options. So maybe here we want to do a checkbox menu. So I'm going to give it the same exact name that I had on that column on the spreadsheet. I'm just going to pull in the options. I'm just going to copy and paste them over from my spreadsheet onto each line here. You're going to want to make sure the capitalization spacing is the same as you used on your Excel sheet, just so they map properly. But now you can see if this is a field that we use to maybe drive signups or ask people to kind of update what they're interested in, we can now have this field available to store that data. So we'll go ahead and set save. Customer type, same sort of thing. Maybe this one we want to just say customer type, keep it same here. And maybe for this one, we just want to use short answer, have that text-based one. City, maybe this is one that we actually don't need this information to target with at all. So you can always just ignore columns on your field and not bring that data in. So if we go ahead and continue from here, this is where it's going to ask us if we want to add them to a group. So most likely when you're importing contacts, you may want to add them to a group, which we're going to discuss in a second, just to kind of keep them bucketed off, understand where they came from, especially for something like this. I'm just going to name it test group so that I can make sure I get rid of those later. And we'll go ahead and hit continue. If we want them to be added to a subscription, which is sort of how they're managing their preferences, we can add them right here. I'm just going to skip that for now, actually. And now we're going to see a summary of all of those details. So we see what our source is. We can see what contact fields we mapped over. We're ignoring city, so we do see that. What group they're being added to. We will update. So we'll add an update here, and no automation workflows will be triggered. So it's where you can kind of double check all your stuff. Go ahead, finish out that import. So I'll go ahead and let that take a minute to kind of process. Any questions on that import process really quickly? Pretty straightforward. I know it kind of roadmaps it for you, but a moment. Doesn't look like it, so we can go ahead and jump into groups. So now we see we've got this test group that I created during the import. Two kind of ways to do your targeting. So groups or segments. Groups are really going to be kind of your standalone bucket of contacts. Subscribers aren't really going to be added to a group unless they're manually placed there, and they're not going to be removed from a group unless manually done so. So it's just sort of a way to bucket your contacts. Maybe think of it as kind of a folder system. It's just kind of a good way to keep your contacts organized, and you can send based on groups, but most likely what you're going to want to send from more, or maybe even keep an eye on more, is going to be your segments. So groups, again, manual buckets, kind of folders, they're pretty static. They won't really change unless you choose to change a subscriber's membership. Segments, on the other hand, are really dynamic and really fluid. So if we go in to create a segment here, this is where those contact fields are going to come into play a lot more. Looks like there was a quick question. So Melanie asked, if someone opts out, are they automatically removed from the group they were assigned to? So actually, if we jump into a group, we'll see, jump into the sign up one form. So they're not going to be necessarily removed from the group, but we will see they land in this opt-out tab of the group. So we've still got the same exact tabs within the group, so that active error and opt-out. So you'll still know who within the groups were added, where they belonged, but you will see if they've opted out, they're going to land in this additional tab here. Great question, but they will be suppressed out from here when we're sending just on the platform side. So jumping back into segments, no problem, thank you. This is where we can create a lot of different fluid dynamic types of organizations. So this is where we can get a lot more relevant with our targeting. And this is also where we can really keep an eye on how our audience is performing. So a couple different ways to use your segments. You can use them based on audience, so what group or subscription they belong to. And then you can also segment based on any of these fields that you brought in. So for example, I just brought in that service interest field. If I wanted to look for people who, it's now going to bring up all of my checkboxes. So maybe I want to look and I want to send an email specifically to people who are interested in home manager staging. I can just go ahead and grab that. I can name that segment. So maybe I want to name it Nora, or here, name it service interest home manager staging. And if we saved that out, do that for a second, I'll clear that out later. And so just to kind of show you, and then we'll jump right back in here. Now we're going to see that we've got a criteria, and it's going to be looking for people who have indicated that they're interested in that home manager staging service. So it really gives you a lot of ability to sort of send more targeted emails. Of course, you can sort of create a segment for each one of these. So maybe you want to create a segment for home manager staging, one for home staging, one for restyles, one for updating, save out all of those segments. And then on the back end, if someone updates their preferences, maybe changes what field they're interested in, this data changes. So maybe they were originally interested in home restyles. They're in this segment, you're sending to them information specifically about this. And then this switches. Maybe they update their information and now they're interested in home staging instead. The minute that field changes on the contact, they'll automatically be removed from this segment and placed into the new segment. So again, this is really dynamic. The platform checks like every minute on the minute to see if any of these fields have changed. So these contacts are constantly flowing in and out of these different segments. So of course, this one is based on a field we brought in, and we could do that based on customer type as well. So maybe we want to look for someone who is, I think one of the options I placed was realtor. So if we look for that, it's automatically going to pull that. It sees one of those test contacts I brought in, had that field. So we see how many contacts that was, and then what percentage of our audience that is. If we save that out, we're now able to send sort of more targeted emails based on that segment. And then finally, the other way we're going to be able to segment is based on response. So this is where we're really going to be able to get a good idea of engagement. So maybe we want to look for people who haven't really engaged with our emails for a while. Maybe we want to send a re-engagement campaign. So the way you would want to do that is actually come down and segment based on this response data. So maybe we want to see that they've received any mailing. Maybe we'll say in the last 8 weeks, so kind of past 2 months, and we can add here. So now we're adding this logic. So we've got and or logic that we can use, and they have not opened any mailing, and we can add it for the exact same time frame, 8 weeks. And then if we wanted to add some or layering, so this one, they have to meet both criteria. They have to have received a mailing in the past 8 weeks, and they have to have not opened that mailing in the past 8 weeks. We can get more specific. So if you want to choose a specific mailing, you can select that right here. And then we can also add this sort of or logic. So or have not clicked any mailing. We want the time frame to be the same, probably 8 weeks. And so now if we save this out, this could be kind of a re-engagement segment. And so this would be one where we're looking for those, they've been receiving mailings for the past 2 months, but they haven't been opening, or maybe they've been opening, but they haven't been clicking anything. And so we've got 75% of the audience, or 82% here with both of that criteria involved. So now that's a way where maybe we want to sort of take that as a sign to ask them what kind of information they're looking, ask them to update their preferences a bit, maybe bring in some more personalization, send a campaign kind of really targeting these people, trying to get them down the pipeline again. And so this segment builder is really great, A, for more targeting, B, to kind of keep a track of where your contacts are at, these sort of different engagement levels. And then they're also really good just to target more relevant emails to people. So I always kind of say, Emma is only as good as the data that you're bringing into it. So the more contact fields that you have, the more data you're storing on your subscribers, the more relevant and targeted your emails are going to be, the more personalization you're going to be able to bring in. And of course, the more you know about your customer base, the better you are enabled to kind of succeed and understand the messaging that works for them. So that's going to be segments versus groups. So segments, again, dynamic, fluid, constantly checking for updates. Groups, on the other hand, are going to be a lot more static. So before we kind of move on into this growth portion more, any questions about groups or segments, contact fields, anything we just kind of looked at here?
Yeah, I have a question on segments.
Sure.
Can you please be a bit more explicit? You said something about segments on, the different kind of things we do, whether those that are interested in home staging, home update, home restyle. Can you explain it further on how we can decipher that?
If you would want to add additional sort of options to that contact field?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you've got another option that you want to add to that contact field. So I'm going to jump out of segments and jump into the contact fields here. So here's where we can manage that. So now we see, of course, those contact fields have been added. So let's say this one, just like you mentioned, we want to add some additional fields here. We can jump in from this drop-down button, choose edit field. And now if we want to add those additional options right here, we can just add a line. And then what was the one that you had mentioned that might be good to kind of look at?
Let's say people that are interested in home staging.
Home staging? So
Yeah,
that's going to be
you already have that there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that will be an option right here already. So if you want to add an additional option from this edit bar, you can come in and add it. Or if you're talking about more on the segment side, which I might have understood your question. So
yes,
I did. I think I did. But what you're saying is, how do we find those people? Is that more what you're asking? Perfect.
Yeah. I know we can easily find those people that haven't opened the emails, but how do you find those people that are interested in a particular segment of what we do?
Yeah, so with that, you're going to need to bring that information in on them. Or, so let's say service interest. I'm just going to pull up those options so we see. So you're going to want to either, when you're importing contacts, already have a field that they've indicated that interest. Another option, which we can talk about here in just a second, is going to be asking for that upfront on a form. So when someone's signing up, they need to give their email address, and then maybe you're going to place this field on the form and ask for them to indicate their interest there. So we can take a look in just a second on adding that to a form, ask them up front when they're signing up, or we can also take a look at building out a form that asks them to provide this information for your existing contacts that don't have this information stored on them, but maybe this is something you would like to start to learn about them. You can always create a form, asks this information, includes this field, and then link that out on a campaign. So you could actually, send a campaign to your audience. We want to make sure that you're really receiving the information that's important to you. We want to tailor your inbox a little bit more. Would you mind just sort of indicating what your preference is? So you're either going to need to know that up front and bring it in, or go ahead and sort of go back out to your subscribers through a campaign and ask them to let you know this yourself. If somehow you do manually sort of know, so maybe of your contacts, you sort of already know who's interested in this, you can always manually update this on a contact record as well. So does that kind of answer your question a little bit further?
Yes, it does, Nora. Thank you so much. That's quite explicit.
No problem. Great question. So we can actually talk about that with the forms right now. So we can talk about how to ask for that. So perfect segue. So thank you. Actually, before I jump into forms, I should probably pause for a second. Does anyone else have any questions about these segments or groups? All right, I'm not seeing any yet, but if any surface, even if they surface next time when we get together, just let me know. So let's talk about asking for this information. So whether it's on a sign-up form as they sign up, or on sort of the back end through a campaign, you're going to want to create a form that sort of links that field and is asking for that information. So in order to do that, you're going to want to jump into this growth portion. So actually sort of managing your sign-up strategy, jump into forms, and we've got two here. So just kind of your default ones, but we can create a new form right here as well. So if we do that, we're going to see we have three different options. So building a regular form, this is just going to be a regular flat form embedded on your website. You can grab the code, grab the link, and just use this form statically. Lightbox form is one we're seeing is a lot more popular. It does drive some pretty good results. This is going to be the one that you kind of see everywhere. It pops up on your website, so you'll embed the code on your website. After a delay, someone will be able to go ahead. It'll pop up and ask and prompt someone to sign up. And then finally, I believe you guys are actually hooked up to the API using your CRM right now. But if you do need those keys, you can choose this option. To talk through sort of asking for that additional information, I'm going to go ahead and build out a regular form. So I'll name this Nora test, and I'll make sure to kind of clear all of this out after. But here's going to be kind of the roadmap. So first we want to set our settings. So if we want to add subscribers to one of your groups, maybe you want to add them to sign up form, or maybe you want to create a group actually that may just be very relevant to this form. So if this is going to be one that is, going out to ask for more information, maybe you want to sort of add and create a group beforehand. Optional though, so you don't necessarily need to add them to a group behind the scenes, but you definitely can for organization. If you want to receive sign-up notifications, so anytime someone signs up through this form or completes this form, you'll receive an email. And then additionally, Google Analytics, if you use that, you can track that right here and connect it using your tracking code. So for those, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that alone for now. Pop-ups out into the builder. And so this is where you can kind of build out the form. So of course, you're just going to want to probably edit this copy. So if this is one where you're asking for updated information, maybe you want to say something like, let us know what your preferences are so we can make sure you're relevant news and information. Of course, you can probably improvise on that a lot better than I can, but you can customize any of these text options. So font family, font size, all of that good stuff. Update the copy here. Email is the only thing we're ever going to really need to send. So that's always going to be required here, kind of indicated by that asterisk. But then we can add that field that we just created. So let's go ahead and say we want to add a field. And let's go ahead and choose that service interest one. So now we can say, we've got the field, we see our options, those all look good. You can change the display name so that the display name on the form actually looks a little different from the internal name you've used for the field. So you can definitely update that right here. Or if you need to create a new field to use, you can do that right here. For this one, I'm going to leave it as service interest just for example's sake. So now we see we've got email, we've got service interest. Maybe we want to reorder it. We can just grab and drag. We can choose if this is required. So if this is one they have to fill out, we can check that required box. Little asterisk appears. In order to complete the form, they do need to fill this information out. Just kind of on a best practices side, always recommend keeping it to about 2 to 3 fields required on a sign-up form. Any more and people tend to kind of get discouraged from it, maybe a little too much work for them. So maybe you want to have one more optional one, but you probably want to cap it at about 2 to 3 just to kind of keep people from, clicking out or not finishing the form. These are going to be your different security options. So legal team may have some ideas around what kind of email consent, tracking consent has to be turned on for where you're located. And then reCAPTCHA, we do recommend just leaving on this kind of prevents bot signup. Sometimes bots will just go scan sites and try to sign up. So really want to avoid those. So we can just kind of leave that on. And we can also add an image. So if you want to add your logo, anything like that, you can turn on the image right here, drag in your image or choose from your library and upload it. So if we kind of look at this right now, preview it out, this is what our sign up form looks like, this page. So we've got our copy, we've got the interest that they have to fill out, email, reCAPTCHA, submit. So pretty basic, but catches all the elements we're kind of looking for right now. After this is going to be what kind of happens after someone completes the sign up. So this is just going to be the success message that shows. So once they submit it, it's just going to sort of give this plain text thing saying, yep, your information has been submitted. Thanks. You could also choose to take them to another web page if you want. So kind of either or there if you just want to be that plain text or customize your own web page to go out to. If you want to send a confirmation email, so if this is a sign up form on your website, you can send just a plain text confirmation email letting them know that they have signed up, confirming their preferences. You can also toggle that off and we can talk through welcome automation. Maybe you want to send an automated, more designed email as opposed to this plain text one. That's definitely an option as well. So in that case, you would just want to leave that off. And then if someone updates their preferences, so the footer of your template, you've got that sort of manage your preferences. If someone does go through and change that, this would be sort of that same confirmation email here. So again, optional. But once we kind of get through here, we can say, great, see all of the different information we've just filled out about what's going to happen here for the form. And now from here, we can just publish. And this is where you have your different options. So if you're going to be sharing a link, so this would be maybe a link that you're going to place behind a call to action button in a campaign. So maybe you're going to ask this in a campaign. You can link out to this form here using this URL. If you need to embed this into your website, you're able to grab that. Same with if you need to embed it into an HTML coded email, something like that. You've got all of these different options here, and you can actually publish it directly on your website. So depending on whether or not you're already using another CRM for your signups, this may be an option to switch to, or it's something that you can just use in campaigns to sort of collect this information, start to get to know your subscribers a bit better. So let's see. All right, so Reggie asked, so the form can be placed on a newsletter, or is this form in a regular email? Great question. So this could be either. So if you have a newsletter and maybe you just want to have a section at the bottom that you add and place a button asking people to sort of update this, you could include it in your newsletter. Or if you want to send an email that's like very specific, letting people know, hey, we need, you know, a minute of your time, just want to make sure you're getting the relevant information that matters to you. You could also send a campaign that's very specific to collecting this information as well. I've seen it done both ways. Sometimes sending a campaign that is calling out, hey, we just want to make sure you're getting the right information. Do you mind just taking a minute to fill this out? I've actually seen some pretty good success rates, especially if you sort of phrase it as it's a pretty passive thing, won't take a lot of your time. You may see people more willing to go through and go, oh, you know what, I do kind of want to make sure that I'm really getting the information about home staging that I want, complete this form, and then you'll have that data on them. So does that answer your question, Reggie? Answer is mostly kind of just both. Awesome. Any other questions about the form builder while we're in here? Awesome. Doesn't look like it, but of course, if something comes up, feel free to chat, unmute, happy to kind of circle back if we need to. All right, so jumping back into audience. The last thing I kind of want to touch on here in this growth portion is going to be your subscriptions. So when you're thinking about subscriptions versus forms, forms is going to be your upfront kind of people are signing up, people are answering questions. It's a way for you to collect information, collect subscribers. Subscriptions, on the other hand, you can kind of think of as your managed preferences. So again, in that footer, when you manage your preferences, you're going to be able to come through, and this is going to be actually what you'll see instead of a sign up form. So if I kind of jump in here, so you've already got one subscription set up. And so if I jump into this managed subscription form, I'm just going to preview it because it's a little bit easier to visualize this way. So I get an email from you. I go to the footer. I choose manage my preferences. So just managing my communication preferences. This is going to be the form that I'm going to see. So it's going to auto-populate my email based on what I clicked from. And now it's going to see that I have some different options here. So I can either unsubscribe from all subscriptions. So I don't want to receive any emails at all. I'm totally opted out. Or if you give me some additional options here, I can also opt down. So maybe this would be something where if we jump back for just a moment into the actual subscriptions, we can see that this is the subscription. So this is the show homes. If we look at it, we're going to see we got subscription name, what that description is. If we wanted to add an additional layer here, so maybe you would be sending some different types of content. So maybe you want to add a newsletter. So maybe one would be general updates and services information. Maybe one would be a newsletter. Some people could choose that they only want to receive the newsletter or they only want to receive general information. That could be an option for y'all. Or you can also add fields onto this sort of managed subscription center. So what that would look like is we could come in and we could actually pull in that contact field that we just added. So service interest, we could add this field. And now if we were to preview it, I'm not going to publish it, but if we previewed it and now someone's managing their preferences, they also have the ability to choose their interest based on that field right here as well. So that's another way to just kind of have that updated on this. And that way people can update not just their preferences if you're sending different types of content, but also this interest field again is available for them to update. So that's an option as well. I kind of recommend if there's any information that helps you send more relevant targeting, including it on this sort of subscription level. So this is more of a back end, more of the customers, the subscribers deciding what they want to receive and see, whereas subscriptions or sign-up forms are really going to be for your sign-up strategy. You are reaching out and requesting information. Subscriptions is more the subscriber coming onto the platform and looking to manage those preferences themselves. So kind of the flip side of you managing your contacts and then your contacts also managing their preferences, if that makes sense. So that can be a little bit confusing, so I'll pause again. Any questions about subscriptions? Again, it's just going to be kind of linking out from that footer and allowing people to update their communication preferences. Cool. Not seeing any questions in the chat, can always circle back. So that's going to kind of cover audience. We talked about our contact management, our groups, our segments, our subscriptions, forms, imports, all of that good stuff. So now we can bring our contacts in, we can sort of manage how they're organized, how we want to target, and we can also talk about the subscription, so the preference center at the end for them, and sign up forms that we can use in campaigns. So from here, let's go ahead and jump into campaigns. We can always circle back on audience, at the end of next week as well, if we have questions that come up in the meantime. But jumping into campaigns, we've got sort of these three different areas. So we've got our emails, we've got our image library, we've got our document library. Emails is going to be broken out into a couple different parts. So we've got our drafts, anything that we're currently working on, easily navigate right back into them. Scheduled, so if anything maybe hasn't sent yet, but is scheduled to go out in the future, those are going to land right in this tab, easily jump into them if you need to. Sent, so of course, anything that's gone out, we're going to be able to grab those from here. We're going to be able to jump in. If we need to look at the response data, we can use this link to the response page, or really easy way, if you want to duplicate a past campaign, you can always come in, duplicate that, and you're able to sort of use that over and over again if you need to. Automated, so we're going to talk about automation a little bit next week, but any emails or campaigns that are associated with an automation, those will live here, so they're all kind of easily accessible for you to edit and update as you need to. And then finally, shared. So of course, you kind of got that HQ level where we're sharing down assets. So at that parent level, if someone shares down a campaign with you, you're able to just come into the shared inbox, grab the email that's been sort of shared down from that HQ level, update what you need to, and then go ahead and schedule it to your audience. So this is where those sort of shared campaigns will live. So if anyone ever says, I've shared a campaign with you, you'll just need to update a few parts and then send it, and be able to come into this tab, find it right here. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into our campaign builder a little bit so we can talk through the different elements there. So I'm going to create a campaign. I'm just going to name it Nora Test for right now. And you've got two options. You can create a regular email, so just a one-off email, or you can always switch to an A/B test version. So A/B test is just sending two versions of the same email just to kind of see what performs best for your audience. So, maybe you kind of want to check if call to action buttons are working better versus call to action hyperlinks. That's where you might want to switch to an A/B test, sort of test out those two different theories and see what your audience is clicking on more. So that would be sort of an example for that use. But for now, we'll go ahead and just create a one-off campaign. So once we come through the campaign builder, we're going to see two options. So we can either kind of start building our campaign, our email off of our recent email. So we can choose one that's recently gone out, update it and send it, or we can use one of the shared templates that's been built out again at that HQ level with all of our branding already set, and use that as our base. So I'll kind of do that. I'll go ahead and just grab this one. And so you can choose anyone that works for you. And now it's going to pull us into our drag and drop editor. So this is where you're going to be able to actually add the content that you need to add, all of the different features here. So of course, we've got our different types of content that can be brought into the campaign here, but we've also got some options with the content that exists. So we're going to see here our actual content blocks. We're going to see a little yellow outline around them. We can grab them. So if we need to move them, we're going to see our different options to drop them in. We also have this gear bar. So if you need to change any of the styles, maybe you want to add a background color, adjust the margin, anything like that, you're able to do that here. And then your settings, if you maybe need to turn on captions for images, you're able to do that right here. Change the layout, you can add another image. So if we want to add some more images, we can do that here. Change the positioning. You're always going to have this gear bar for every type of content block that you're working with. So if you wanted to make the logo a little bit larger, that's going to depend on the image that you upload. And so that's something that maybe you would want to adjust at the assets level on the HQ level. Sorry, I just saw a question pop up in the chat and started answering right away. But Lynn asked, how could we make the logo a little larger here? That's just going to depend on the image that you're placing in. So if you want the logo a little bit bigger, you're just going to sort of want to bring in a larger logo. But great question. But you can also sort of here, this is where you're going to want to choose that image from your library or upload one. And so this, of course, is all being sort of brought in, this pre-populated content is something that was shared down from the assets level. So someone already created the branding for this email, the layout. So mostly when you come in here, you're just going to need to update what needs to be updated, make sure it's relevant for who you're sending to. But this sort of branding is going to be set at the asset level and then shared down for you to be able to edit. So maybe this one wouldn't be relevant anymore. So you can also go ahead, use the trash bin if you need to. Other option is duplicate. So you can sort of just easily create the same content block right below it. Some other options are going to be available within actually the test builder. So this one, maybe I would want to add some personalization here. So in order to pull in personalization, that's going to be based on your contact fields. And so once we are in a text box here, like this one is, we're going to be able to see we have some additional options that pop up here with this toolbar. So we can change sort of this style set, bold, italic, underline, list. Lists are really great to make email scannable, really great for mobile. So maybe you want to use some bullet points or a numbered list to make that a little bit easier for people to scan. And then you're also going to be able over here, most importantly, is going to be the insert. From here, you can choose personalization. And now we're going to see those different fields that we have pop up. So most common one is going to be first name. So if you wanted it to say, welcome first name, if you have that information stored on me, it's going to pull in my name. So I would see welcome Nora. If not, so if you just have my email, but you don't have my first name stored, you can put a placeholder right here. I would see welcome friend because my name isn't there. But you can also choose from any of these different fields that you've added. So see here, maybe birthday, maybe you want to send an automated birthday email, you can pull in the birthday field, customer type, maybe for some reason you would want to personalize on that. Most common though is usually going to be name. So you can use that insert, personalization, place the field that you want to be personalized, and then that sort of placeholder fallback text. The other option from here is actually going to be this insert. So if we choose insert, we want to add some text, maybe we want to use a hyperlink in conjunction with a call to action button. We can come over here to this link button. We're going to have a couple different options. So of course, most obvious one is going to be a URL, so we can link out there. We can also link out to an email address. So if you want the recipients of this email to be able to, maybe email you for some more information, maybe you want them to be able to reach out to a particular sales rep or a sales inbox if they're interested, you can choose email address, populate the email address that you want it to go to, and you can even pre-populate the subject line automatically for them so they don't have to sort of think about it that much. Document, so if you've got a catalog, we will host those and it will link out to that document. And then finally, SurveyMonkey. So if you do have a SurveyMonkey account and you want to connect it, you can link out as well from here. So those are going to be kind of your different text options. And then finally, really important one, spell check. I do this at the end of every email. I just jump into my text box, pull up this ABC check, and now I'm going to see, well, name, of course. But now we can kind of make sure, nowhere else, cool, we're good to go. So that's a handy little feature as well. From here, we can also drag in additional content blocks if we need to. So maybe here, this is all good, but maybe we need to drag in, maybe we have a little additional information we need to add. We can drive in maybe a left line block. And so that's going to bring in an image and some text. And so now we can kind of add to this template, add additional information as needed, some additional content, depending on what you're sending out about, or don't need to, we can always delete it. Your other options are going to be a button. So of course we've got a button right there. So we might just want to keep that one. It's got our styling, good to go. But if we need to add an additional button, we can come in here, we can choose the text, so what it actually says. So maybe if this is one where we're linking out to a form to collect information, maybe this would be one, tell us more. And so that way they know it's call to action. We're asking you to just sort of give us a little more information. And this is where we could place that link to that form. So like we saw at the end of the form, once we got to that publish stage, we're able to grab a link to embed in a social media or a campaign, copy that link, bring it in right here. And then when they click on this link here, on this button, it's going to link them out to that form. They're able to put in their email, update that sort of field preference that we've asked for, and then we're easily going to bring that right back into the platform and store that information on them. So this may be one element you kind of want to bring in to just sort of collect that information. And so maybe the link, it isn't to your website, but maybe it's to a form asking for a little more information. Of course, you can adjust the size, shape, position, fill color, all of those sort of basic settings right here. I will go ahead. Get me out of there. Cool. So we've got a nice call to action right here. So kind of your two options, hyperlink or a button. We've also got a divider. So if it seems like there's a lot of content, not a lot of negative space, we may want to drag in a divider to just sort of break up the content a bit. And that's just going to sort of, again, allow for more scannability, make it a little bit easier for people on mobile to determine between the different types of content. HTML. So if you have maybe a snippet of custom code that you want to bring in, you can always drag in this HTML code, edit it, place the code in here, and add that in. Follow. So if you have social media that you want to include, which you already do right here, but maybe you're sort of building out, you want some additional social media, you can always come in here, complete the icons, choose the icon set, switch to black and white if you want to, finish out the URL and add those. But of course, you've already got some social media branded right here, so it may not be as important for you, but maybe you just want to double check those links, make sure they're going to the right place. Video block. So video is really great for click-through. Of course, we wouldn't be able to actually send the video, but if we pull in a link to a YouTube or a Vimeo, looks like I was watching a Calm YouTube video, can bring in actually whatever the thumbnail is. So it's going to automatically default to the thumbnail that is being hosted by. So if this is the YouTube thumbnail, that's what it's going to pull in. If you need to update the thumbnail at any point, you can choose the still that you want to use, place a play button over it, and then just place a link behind that. So kind of bring in an image, make it look like a video, place that play button over it and link it out. That's one way to sort of subvert this thumbnail if you need to. But otherwise, it's going to grab that thumbnail, link you out to this actual YouTube link so they can watch the video. And then if we insert it here, we're going to see now we've brought in that video. Someone could click through this campaign, watch the video, and now we've got a little additional engagement. So video, GIFs, movement, those all tend to perform pretty well in driving some traffic. We've also got event. So if you have Eventbrite and you want to connect your account, you've got that option right here from this block. Survey we already kind of saw. Oh, if it lets me cancel. Let me refresh my page really quickly. All right, cool. So event block can connect Eventbrite. Survey is going to be SurveyMonkey again. So if you don't want to use the button, you have that option, but you can also just drag a survey block in right there. And then RSS feed. So if you do have an RSS feed that you want to link out to from your website, you can just place that feed URL, choose how many content items you want to show, how you want them to display, and then go ahead and add that feed to your campaign as well. From here, we can preview it. So if we want to take a look at what it looks like just on a generic desktop, it's going to take a moment, get that ready. Let's see. And now we can see this is the generic view here on a desktop, what this would look like size down for mobile. So it looks pretty good, everything's stacking right. And then last is sort of like a generic iPad type view. So preview, make sure it looks good. Got our save options, so we can save a copy if we want to. And then we're also always going to want to make sure that we're sending a test to ourselves before we schedule a campaign out. So coming up here, we can just jump into the send test button. It's going to just sort of proof the email, make sure that all links are kind of going out. And then you can just go ahead, type whatever email you want it to go to. So if I wanted to send a test to myself, I would just add my email. You can add up to 10 people here to send the test. Populate the subject line, pre-header text. So that's going to be a little bit of preview text that shows below the subject line for some email clients. And then you can also add a note. So if you're sending it to your colleagues, maybe you want to say, does this look good? They'll see that this email comes in with test added to the subject line. And that way you can kind of check it out on your phone, maybe check it out on your desktop inbox, make sure it's looking good across the different email clients that you use, and just double check it before you actually send it. So you send the test right from there. And then finally, you've previewed it, you've spell checked it, everything looks good. You can go ahead and review and send. Looks like Lynn asked another question for enlarging the logo. So that may actually be locked at the assets level. So since these templates are created at the assets level and shared down, some changes are only going to be made at that level. So if the logo needs to be a little bit larger on that template, you're going to actually want to double check with the user who created the template and see if they can edit it there, as some elements will be locked just for branding sort of consistency at sort of the HQ manager level there. So that should help. But of course, if you're having issues there, if you want to send a logo, I can always kind of walk through that, placing it in the campaign as well. But that's most likely going to be due to this sort of assets level, the way the template was designed. So once we're in here, we're going to see a little snapshot of our email. We're going to see our recipients. So this is where we're going to be able to do our targeting. So of course we can send based to our group. So if we want to just send to my test group, choose that right here. We can also send to our segments. So maybe here, again, we've saved a segment here that's indicating that they're interested in home manager staging. Maybe this is an email that's specific to home manager staging. We're really emphasizing that. We're really making that point, and we want to send this to people who have already indicated their interest. We can send to that segment right there. People who have that contact field checked on, they belong in that segment. They're now going to be eligible to receive these sort of campaigns based on that targeting that you've already set up there. And then finally, subscriptions. So if you do add additional subscriptions, maybe you add a newsletter subscription, and this is your newsletter, you can choose from that subscription as well that now you want to send to those people who have managed their preferences to be the newsletter. So a couple of different ways of targeting. Segments is sort of going to be the most dynamic, the most up to date. But of course, groups, if you are sending and you know that these people are interested, you know that they've already asked and opted in for this information, you can definitely just send to your groups as well. You also have the option to exclude an audience segment. So maybe for some reason there's going to be a segment that you don't want to receive these emails. Maybe you want to suppress out people who haven't been engaged for a while and maybe target them, sort of put them on pause for a bit. You can always choose from your segments here and exclude them. It'll check them against this. And if this recipient is on this list, but they're in this exclusion segment, they will not receive the campaign. So maintain a little control that way if you need to. And also enter your subject line right here. So of course, whatever your subject line is going to be. And you can also switch to a split test. That's a hard one to say, right here. And so you can add the variation, maybe question versus statement, emoji, no emoji, tone, something like that. Maybe you want to test out 2 different versions of your subject line. Automatically, it's going to be sent to 20% of your recipients up here. So if you've got 100 people targeted, it's going to send this test to 20 of them. It's going to track, see which one opens better. So for the next 4 hours, which version got the most email, whichever one kind of wins among those 20 people, then it's going to go out to the remaining 80%, 80 contacts that you've targeted up here. So you have the option to auto send it. You can check that off if you want to. You're just going to want to remember to go into your response, check out your in progress emails, and remember to send the winner once you kind of determined the time is up for that. But easy way to kind of split test right from there for the subject line. And of course, you've got a lot more robust testing options within that AB version. Pre-header text is just going to be a snippet of preview text that shows in the inbox for some clients. So you may want to use this. I see this a lot being used as like a continuation of the subject line. So if the subject line is a question, maybe the pre-header text is the beginning of the answer. It is optional. I do recommend including it. Otherwise, it's just going to pull in the first line of text from your email. So you can either set this up front or it's just going to pull in that first line of copy. Sender names, you can always adjust this. Maybe you have certain salespeople talking to certain groups. You can adjust the sender name here. And then you can also adjust the sender email. So if you want to change who it's coming from, maybe you want it to come from marketing@showhomes.com, you can adjust that right there. And then if you need to set a separate reply to email address, you can go ahead, add that inbox right there. And then any replies to this email go to that inbox here. From there, you can either schedule it for approval. So then it's going to go to a manager. They're going to look over it, make sure everything looks good, actually go ahead and schedule it, or schedule it for later. Same exact process. You're just choosing the date that you would like it to go out then. So that's going to be pretty much the essentials of sending. Any questions around the campaign builder, sending, any of this process? I know we're kind of at time. I've got a few minutes so we can kind of pause for questions, or if you want to go in and play around a bit in between our trainings, please feel free to come back with questions as well. But I'll go ahead and pause and see if anyone has any right now. All right, so Leslie asked if we could go into the A/B split test a bit more. So here in this option, this is really going to be the only part that you can split test. So maybe this would be, welcome to our campaigns, and maybe want to test that versus, well, that probably wouldn't be a great one. But here, maybe this would be a question. So are you ready to get started versus let's get started. So maybe those would be 2 options if you're sending about a service. So maybe you want to test what works better. Is it a question or even just a statement? Maybe you want to include emojis in this one and no emojis, and just sort of get a sense for what's prompting opens. Next time, if we have a little time after the end, I can actually jump into building out an A/B full campaign, and we can look at those options there as well. So I'll keep that in mind if we have time next time. We can go ahead and definitely jump into the split testing a bit more and talk about those options. And Lynn asked kind of best practices. No problem. That's a great question. And that's one that's definitely really helpful and I really recommend doing often. So Lynn asked, what is it best to say who it's from, a person, the company? Here I would really recommend, it depends on who you're sending to and what the campaign is. So if it's something like a weekly newsletter, you might actually want to use a sender email that you've created. Of course, you want to have access to all of these inboxes, make sure they're all functioning emails associated with your domain. But maybe for your newsletter, maybe you want to actually use newsletters at showhomes.com. That can sort of tell people what the content is. They can kind of look out for it time after time. If they want to mark that, maybe their Gmail, the way they categorize, you can sort of break out the sender based on the email. It's also really good for something like a name. This is sort of one where if someone's working with, you know they've been in touch with a salesperson, something like that, maybe you want to kind of have that more personalized touch there. But it's really up to you and kind of how you want to target your audience. So we've got another question. So Chris asked, on the email header, sometimes an image is displayed behind the logo and sometimes there is no image. So Chris, do you mind clarifying just a little bit more on what you mean there?
We have two different templates. We have one with a staging image and one that's black and white. So I think that's maybe be what he's saying. Okay,
perfect. Yeah, that would just, if that's the case, thanks for jumping in, Matt. It would just depend on the template that you're selecting there. Looks like, awesome, great question. Reggie asked, so why does it say pending approval when sending a test email? Again, great question. So that's going to be because we've got some different permission levels. So based on the sub account and the user, when we're choosing here, I don't turn off split test. Okay. And now it says split submit for approval. This is actually going to go land in the HQ part of the platform. So in a manager like Matt, a manager user at the HQ level, they're actually going to go through, review the email, make sure everything looks good, branding's up to date, everything is looking the way that it needs to, and then they'll actually go through, approve, and send that out. So it's just going to go to someone for sort of a double check and then actually be scheduled. So that, again, is just based on the different sub-account permissions and setup.
We don't have any of those at our level, so you guys are free to, we're not approving emails to go out. So just so you're aware. So I'd have to check your, Reggie, your permission level, make sure that it's the right one. So
yeah, and the way I may be logged in as is with someone who would have this level. So I'm kind of logged in it myself. I just logged in through a dummy account. So again, depending on your user permission, just like Matt mentioned, you may or may not have that extra sort of level there. I think that was all the questions in the chat. Any other questions about anything we've kind of talked about today? Like I said, next time we're going to go through response, insights, automation. We can jump into A/B testing a bit and talk a little bit further about those options. But this is probably a good stopping point. And of course, if you're in the platform playing around between those trainings, jot down any questions that come up and we can definitely take some time to review those next time as well.
Awesome. Well, I will say I got several texts saying, boy, she talks fast. I'm going to have to watch this over 2 or 3 times. So she covered a lot of information. So thank you, Nora.
No problem. I'm so sorry. That's the Pittsburgher in me. Fast talkers.
That was great info. I think everyone had a good experience. So thank you for your time. We'll talk next week.
Great. Also, this recap recording over. That way you guys can all listen back. Make sure you don't miss anything, since that is always the one thing that I'm trying to work on. So I'll share this with you, and thanks so much for taking the time, and look forward to kind of talking to you next week.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.